What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you each and every Monday and Thursday by the Hockey News. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I cover the Nashville Predators here at the Hockey News. I'm joined, of course, on this Thursday by my wonderful co-host, Michael Augello, who covers the Buffalo Sabres here for us at the Hockey News. And trade deadline now in the rearview mirror, but we've still got lots to talk about with all of your latest bite-sized stories from around the NHL. But before we get into all of that, do want to let you know that we are brought to you by our good friends at Sticks.com. Hey, hockey players, why drop a fortune on your sticks when you can snag pro-level composite sticks at Sticks.com? That's STIX.com. These all black beauties are made for sniping, saucing, and shutting it down, all while looking sharp on the ice. And the best part is that prices start at just $85.13 US for a 3-pack. Yep, you heard that right. Elite sticks without the elite price. Hit up Sticks.com. Again, that's STIX.com now and gear up without the markup. Let's go. All right, Michael. Talked about it already. Trade deadline is over, and here we were thinking we weren't going to have anything to talk about. But Jonathan Quick and the New York Rangers, let's dive into that first. They agreed to a 1-year, $1.55 million contract on Wednesday. So the contract has $300,000 in potential performance bonuses as well. So I'm going to read all of these bonuses to you because they're very specific. And then I want to get your thought on which one of these Quick is most likely to hit in 2025-26. So if he has 20 starts with a .915 save percentage or above, he gets $75,000. If he hits 35 games played, he gets $25,000. 40 games played is $50,000. 20 wins, also $50,000. And then 25 wins, he gets $100,000. Now that's a lot, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I looked that list over, and I think he's going to have a tough time hitting any of them. The one I think has the best chance to would be the 20 starts with a .915 save percentage, because he put up some excellent stats last year for a team that went to the Eastern Conference Final. But that's not this team anymore. I mean, they've traded off Kaapo Kakko and they've traded off Ryan Lindgren, and it doesn't resemble the team that was there last year. And there are probably going to be more changes over the summer. The other thing is he'll be limited in how many starts he gets, because Igor Shesterkin, more than likely, with him being paid the whopping amount that he's being paid now, he's probably going to play 55 to 60 games. So that limits Quick to maybe 25 at the most. And it's going to be tough for him to get 20 wins in 25 starts. Now, if Shesterkin gets injured, he could play and he could hit the 35 or the 40 game mark. But I think if the Rangers reconstitute themselves and become the team that they were last year, which is a tough thing to imagine, I think the best chance he has is to hit the 20 starts and .915 save percentage.
Won't be easy either, but as you said, contract very well deserved for Jonathan Quick. All right, so remember back, it feels like years ago now, we were talking about all of the drama with the Vancouver Canucks, and that has since passed on. Now it seems like there is drama happening, or at least someone's trying to make it happen in your hometown of Buffalo, Michael. So we got to talk about this. On the Spit and Chicklets podcast this week, Paul Bissonnette alleged that Rasmus Dahlin met with GM Kevyn Adams and said that if things don't turn around fast, that he wants out of Buffalo. And then Dahlin later, speaking to the media, denied the rumor. He responded and saying, quote, "I have never said I want out of here. I'm not happy where we're at. I don't want to lose. We have to get better." So pretty standard stuff there. Whether or not this alleged meeting actually happened, how concerned do you think Kevyn Adams should be about some of the Sabres' top stars, whether it's Dahlin or someone else, potentially starting to ask for trades?
Well, if this was in a vacuum, meaning the only instance, then I don't think there would be a great deal of concern, especially after Dahlin categorically denied that he said that. Now, it sounds like the meeting did occur. I mean, there's various sources that said a meeting did occur with Adams and Dahlin. But, we're talking about a team. Ryan O'Reilly asked out. He said, I don't know what the direction of this team is. They traded him. Jack Eichel, it was the neck surgery and the dispute over that. But clearly, he didn't think that this team was going to win, so he asked out. Sam Reinhart, he had a year left in his contract. Rasmus Dahlin had a year left in his contract. They knew that those players were not going to re-sign in Buffalo, so they traded them, and they got decent value for both of them, but they still traded them. I mean, and Dylan Cousins wanted to stay, but it seemed that the pressure of the situation in Buffalo, he just wasn't producing. Now he gets traded to Ottawa, and he scored 2 goals in 3 games. So, I mean, that's an ugly look for this franchise, and really, it's dysfunctional. It's at the point now where, people are wondering, like, what's going on with this franchise. I don't know whether Kevyn Adams' job is on the line. You would think with the lack of results that it would be, but he was allowed to make the Cousins deal. And, there's been indicators that basically he did the deal for change's sake. So, I mean, Adams should be worried about his job, but I don't know if that's reality. And, some of the players, they're going to face a situation in the summer. Alex Tuch has got a year left on his contract. JJ Peterka is a restricted free agent. Devin Levi is a restricted free agent. They could sign offer sheets. They could say, trade me. And if that continues to happen, then this is a franchise that's sort of dead man walking.
Yeah, it certainly does make you question. I think we've already been questioning earlier in the year how safe Kevyn Adams' job is. So have to keep an eye on that situation, certainly as we head into the offseason here. But perhaps on a lighter note, let's look back at the trade deadline for a minute, because we talked about earlier this week, the Seattle Kraken made the trades of Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde. And so obviously in return, they get some draft picks and hope that their prospect pipeline is really going to help them, out in the next couple of years and kind of kickstarting their little rebuild here. So looking at one of their, highly touted prospects right now is Berkly Catton. He was the number 8 overall pick in the 2024 draft. He currently is playing in the WHL in Spokane. Obviously, he's still a very young player, but how soon, in your opinion, do you think Catton could be in a position where he could come not only help this team at the NHL level, but potentially help them in a top 6 role?
Well, he's a very talented young player who was selected in the top 10 of the draft in Vegas. A lot of skill. But he's 19 years old. He doesn't turn 20 until after December 31st. And I mean, they could give him 9 games at the NHL level without burning the first year of his ELC. But the problem is he's sort of like Shane Wright 2.0, where he can't go down to the American Hockey League. So now he could play in the AHL this year after Spokane gets eliminated on an amateur tryout. Spokane could make a deep run in the Memorial Cup. And if they get through the WHL playoffs, they could go to the Memorial Cup. And then, he might not be available for Coachella Valley if they make a run in the playoffs. So it's a question of whether they think he's ready for the NHL. And at 19, and I think if you look at the situation with Wright, they sort of played it along for half a season and then sent him back to the WHL. I don't know if they want to repeat that over again. And the rules may allow him to go to the NCAA for a year, which might be an option. He'd play against bigger, stronger players, and I think that would help his development. He definitely will be going to the World Juniors for Team Canada. At least I would think he would, scoring 106 points this year. But it all depends on what he does at training camp next year and if they think he's ready. They might give him a look, but I would think that the NCAA route would probably be better for him than going back to junior for another year, because he's dominating at that level. And I don't know what really he can benefit from by dominating another year in the WHL.
Yeah, it seems to be causing a lot of issues with this, the age issue and the limits on when players can go play in the AHL. So this new development with NCAA eligibility could definitely change the trajectory of some of these prospects here. So will be good situation to keep an eye on there. All right, everyone is talking about, and with good reason, Ovechkin's chase to break Wayne Gretzky's goal record. And in the meantime, though, sort of in the shadows, Sidney Crosby is also chasing a Gretzky record. So Sidney Crosby is currently tied with Gretzky with 19 consecutive point per game seasons. So that, for the record, is every season of Crosby's career. So he's got 70 points in 65 games right now. Do you think, looking at where he is right now and finishing out the rest of the season, that he will get it done and get a 20th point per game season? Or, and if he doesn't, then, what would it take? I feel like maybe an injury would have to happen, but what does this say about his ability to consistently just dominate for the Penguins, even, with the way that their season is going?
I mean, first of all, that bum Gretzky, all of his records are just falling by the wayside. I mean, my God. I mean, we know Sidney Crosby is an all-time great. We know he probably will not. They won't have to wait 3 years to put him in the Hall of Fame. He should be put in immediately. He's going to break the record, I think, barring injury. But if he's injured, I mean, he's at a point per game plus right now. So if God forbid something happened to him, he would still break the record. I think he'll continue to pile up points for the remainder of the season with the Penguins, because he's Sidney Crosby. He's going to play every power play. He's going to be on the first line, and the Penguins are not very good, so he's going to get a lot of opportunities. So I think it'll happen. I think the most impressive thing is that he's doing this and continue to do this with a team that's declining. I mean, they're a rebuilding team. They're starting to trade off pieces. And if they don't trade off pieces, you have players like Malkin and Letang who are getting older and they're sort of declining, but Crosby seems to be ageless, and he's performing at a higher level, which contributes to the speculation about him wanting to go someplace else. But I'm not sure. I think he's probably going to want to stay in Pittsburgh for the remainder of his career. And I find it hard to believe that he won't continue to score at a point per game pace going forward.
Well, as you mentioned, Pittsburgh definitely having a down season, certainly by their standards. They were definitely sellers at the deadline, and Kyle Dubas was wheeling and dealing. But looking at other teams around the league at the trade deadline, are there any teams that you think are going to regret not being active enough at the deadline, whether they were perceived to be buyers or sellers? Are there teams that you think maybe didn't sell enough assets or didn't buy enough?
Well, in the seller category, the team that you cover is one of them. I thought that immediately after our show on Monday, that they really didn't do enough. But they were locked up by no move clauses to some of the players they might want to move, and the sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, no move clause on Ryan O'Reilly. The team that I categorized, the selling team, was the Detroit Red Wings. They made one trade, the Mrazek Craig Smith for Joe Veleno deal with Chicago. They acted as a middleman in the Gord Bjorkstrand deal, and that's it. And this is a team that I think desperately needs to make the playoffs. Now, they beat Buffalo on Wednesday, and that ended a 6-game losing streak. So you would think in the midst of that losing streak, Steve Yzerman would say, I've got to do something to bring this team to a level, but he didn't do it. Now, that may suggest that he's safe, and they're just willing to play out what's going on right now. But I think they desperately need to make the playoffs. And the buying team that didn't make the move that I thought that they were going to make was the Los Angeles Kings. The Kuzmenko deal, I'm sorry. It's just not good enough. Now, I may be wrong if he scores 10 goals in 20 games and I got egg on my face, but they didn't add what they needed to do. And, they will play Edmonton in the first round of the playoffs. And unless Darcy Kemper turns into Ken Dryden, they're going to lose to the Edmonton Oilers.
Well, obviously, one of the biggest buyers at the trade deadline was the Dallas Stars, with obviously the Mikko Rantanen deal, and then of course the other deals, the Wyatt Johnson extension, and the acquisitions of Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci earlier in the year. But sort of falling by the wayside there, I think, is the impressive season that Jason Robertson has had for Dallas. He's been on a tear this year. He's got 19 goals and 38 points in 28 games dating back to January 1st. So that, for reference, that ties him with Nikita Kucherov for fourth in the NHL. So in pretty good company there. He's also in the middle of an 8-game point streak. He's got 15 points rather in that span. So looking at, they acquired Rantanen, obviously that's a huge boost for the Stars, but looking at their roster as it is, who do you think is going to be the bigger X factor for this team in the playoffs? Is it going to be Rantanen, or do you think it's going to be a guy like Jason Robertson?
Well, even when he had what was perceived as a disappointing season last year, he had 80 points. I'd love to have a disappointing season like that. He still scored 16 points in the playoffs. He was a performer for them, and when it counted, going to the Western Conference Final. I think Rantanen is the random element here. We don't know what happens. He comes there after being in Colorado and Carolina. It's a settling in process. And if he settles in and performs the way he has in the playoffs with the Avalanche, then I think, he's going to help the Stars maybe get through Colorado in the first round and go to the Stanley Cup final. I think Robertson's consistent, and he's having a much better year this year. He's over point per game pace. He's almost reached his same total goals as last year. So I think you can depend on him to be Jason Robertson, but we don't know which Mikko Rantanen we're going to see, and we'll see that next month.
Well, right below Robertson in that ranking of goal scorers since January 1st, we have Tomas Hertl with Vegas. He's got 17 goals in his last 27 games going back to the first of the year. So he recorded a hat trick against the LA Kings earlier this week. So his goal total is now 27 on the season, which puts him on pace to tie his career high of 35, which is he reached that point with San Jose back in the 2018-2019 season. So obviously his first playoff run with Vegas last year after he was traded, kind of disappointing. Do you think that he can rebound from that and end up being one of the biggest X factors for this team in the postseason this year?
I mean, what happened with Hertl last year is what could happen with Rantanen this year. It was the settling in. He gets traded from San Jose, where he'd been his entire career. He didn't perform well in the playoffs. Vegas loses to Dallas in the first round. This year, he's more settled in. He's playing really well. As you said, he's probably going to break his career high in goals. I think he's a key aspect of Vegas's postseason aspirations. They can't depend on just Mark Stone and Jack Eichel to score goals. They need Adin Hill to play well between the pipes, just like he did when they won the Cup in 2023. They need their defense to be solid, and they need secondary scoring. And I think Hertl can provide that. I mean, Vegas has a very good opportunity to at least get to the Western Conference Final, because the Pacific Division, in my estimation, is weak. Edmonton is not the team that they were last year, but Hertl will have a big part in whether they can get to the Western Conference Final and maybe the Stanley Cup Final.
Well, not playing for a playoff team as it stands right now, but another guy who has just been on fire since the first of the year is Clayton Keller with Utah. So he's got the 6th most points in the league since January 1st. He's got 36 points in 27 games. So again, for context, that's only 2 points less than Nikita Kucherov in that same span. So, and he's done it in 2 fewer games played than Kucherov has. So he's on pace for a career high 94 points this season. So looking at this, obviously this is an exciting young player in Utah's system. They made him their captain, obviously becoming a big cornerstone piece for them. Do you think if he keeps on this 94-point pace, could Clayton Keller be a 100-point player next year?
It's possible. I mean, you look at right now, he has a 24 point gap between him and the second leading scorer on Utah, Nick Schmaltz. So, I mean, he's clearly a dominant player offensively. I saw him play against Toronto earlier this week, and he's a difference maker, but he can't do it all by himself. You have Dylan Guenther, who is nearly at a point per game place, who's starting to establish himself in the league, and their defense is a lot better since they moved from Arizona to Utah. They actually added a defense because they didn't have one in Arizona. Karl Vejmelka has played very well as their number one goaltender. They really need to add to their core group for Keller to have to reach the 100-point level. I think that essentially they're supposed to be possibly in the Mitch Marner sweepstakes. If they get Mitch Marner or a prominent free agent, add that to their core group, and have somebody who can play off of Keller, then I think they can be he can be a 100-point player. But I think they have to add to that group, and they have some good prospects in the organization as well. But I think they need to make a big splash either in a trade or in free agency to be able to for him to get to that level.
Well, we already talked about earlier in the show, Berkly Catton, 8th overall pick in 2024. Interestingly enough, the 2nd overall pick from 2024, Artyom Levshunov, made his NHL debut with the Blackhawks on Tuesday. So he's played 50 games in the AHL this year. He's recorded 5 goals, 22 points during that span. Do you think that this was really the right time to bring Levshunov to the NHL stage, or, in the Blackhawks case, did they not really have a choice?
Well, it's a good time after the trade deadline for a young player to be rewarded for solid play in the AHL. Rockford, it doesn't look like they're going to make the Calder Cup playoffs. So a month in the NHL, I think is beneficial. He could play 9 games and not burn the first year of his ELC. That might be what they do. Then they send him back to Rockford to finish off the season. Or if they're not concerned about that, they could let him play out the season in the NHL. And that gives the organization, and it gives Levshunov sort of a gauge on what he needs to do to maybe be ready next year at training camp. Now, he's 19 years old. I mean, more than likely. And if we know defensemen mature a lot slower than forwards. And like this year, Kevin Korchinski, who was a high pick for them a couple of years ago, he's gone up and down. So I would think that unless he takes large steps, he's probably going to end up in the American Hockey League next year to start. But I think it's a good thing to give him an opportunity to see what the NHL is like and basically adjust to what he needs to improve on in the offseason.
All right. Well, we talked about already all of the exciting things happening in Dallas right now. Obviously, the return, a key piece of that return for Mikko Rantanen that went back to Carolina in that trade was Logan Stankoven. So apparently it's a trend, guys scoring in their debuts with the Hurricanes this year, because Mark Jankowski did the same thing. But Logan Stankoven scored a goal in his debut with the Hurricanes earlier this week. He's also seen a significant increase in his ice time. So, and he's been playing on the team's top power play unit as well. So looking at his role, again, still early, but looking at the role that he's been playing for this Carolina team, do you think that Stankoven, who, by the way, was an early candidate potentially for a Calder Trophy this year, do you think that he could have a better chance of truly breaking out in Carolina than he would have in Dallas.
I think he would have broken out in Dallas. I think it would have taken a longer time because, last year he played a significant portion of the season in the American Hockey League and then got called up late in the season, played well. And in the playoffs, he played in a top 9 role, not top 6, but top 9. I think eventually he would have gotten into the top 6. He's a very talented player. In Carolina, after trading Martin Necas, after trading Rantanen, he's in the top 6 right now. And he's going to get plenty of ice time and he's going to get plenty of opportunity. So I think either way it would have happened, but I think it's going to happen quicker with the Hurricanes. As long as they put him with, good line mates, he could really thrive, and he's got a lot of talent. So I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely speaks to now the lack of depth that Carolina has and the overwhelming amount of depth that Dallas has, that they were able to move on from a player like that in order to get Rantanen. But interesting to see how all of these teams are faring still early on after the trade deadline. We'll see how these teams continue leading up to the playoffs. So for now, though, that is going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you, as always, Michael, for joining me, talking some hockey today. Thank you again to Sticks.com for sponsoring us. We will be back with an all-new episode next Monday. We'll see you then.